Hello, hi everyone. Hope you all are doing well. Today we are about to start our journey of class 10 biology. So with lots of love and joy, I'm welcoming you all to this journey of first chapter of biology, that is the life process. Life process. What do you mean by life process? You can see two terms, life and the process. Take the first word as such, life. So life or living. Life or living is a condition which differentiates between living and non-living substance. How can you judge something is living or not? If you see around, you could categorize the things that you see around into two main classifications. One is a living and non-living substance. So again, I'm asking the same question to you. What actually help you to judge which is living and non-living? Well, the first and foremost feature that pops up in your mind could be movement or locomotion. In fact, that's the very first point that any layman can point it out. Every living organism has the ability for the movement or locomotion. So locomotion are basically a movement where organisms undergo displacement. That is, the organism can move from one place to another. Non-living organism does not have the ability for locomotion. It may move, but it happens under an influence of external factor. But living organism can move its own. Well, there are many other features of living state. We'll have a quick glance on these features of the living state. As I told you, the first feature is locomotion. For locomotion or movement, organism requires energy. How they're going to get the energy? From the food and the oxygen they respire. The same way, every organism has the ability for a growth and development. The growth and development of different organisms are in fact different. You take the case of plants they grow and develop through their entire life. And they have a specialized organ, specialized tissue called meristematic tissue for their growing path. But we animals grow only for a certain age. So you can say growth and development is a feature of a living state. Every living organism has the ability to respond to a stimulus. When you think of your favorite dishes, you start salivating. That's a response to a stimulus. When light flashes on your eye, you suddenly blinks your eye. That's again a response to a stimulus. Extension of the pseudopodia when amoeba finds its prey near it is again a response to a stimulus. Opening and closure of stomata is nothing but the response to a stimulus. So every organism has the ability to respond to a stimulus. For every beginning, there is an ending. Like that, for every living organism, there is a death. So death is again a feature of a living state. But above all, the most important and demarcating feature which differs from living and non-living substance are in fact metabolism. So metabolism are defined as the sum total of all chemical reaction occurring inside a living organism with the help of a biocatalyst or enzyme. So what's enzyme? Enzymes, I told you, are basically a catalyst, a biocatalyst. You learned in chemistry that catalysts are substances which help us to speed up a chemical reaction. Like that, enzymes are also a biocatalyst which help us to speed up the chemical reaction occurring inside a living organism. Enzymes, for instance, salivary amylase, you might have heard in the smaller classes. Salivary amylases can convert bigger food molecule into smaller substances. And hence salivary amylase is an example for an enzyme. So that's all about the life. Now moving to the second term, that's our processes. What are life process? For every organism or even a cell, for their survival, it has to undergo certain life activities. So these basic steps every living organism has to undergo for their survival are termed as life processes. In fact, this chapter is full of life process. So examples of life process could be listed as nutrition, respiration, transportation, excretion. So we'll be discussing each and every life process in more and more detail in the upcoming videos. Dear children, let's learn about nutrition. For every living organism, once they perform various life activities, for example, singing, dancing, fighting, howling, what will be the life process? They require a constant supply of energy. So who's going to provide the supply of energy? Yes, that's the food. The food that we eat is a source of energy. But that food has to be converted to the energy by undergoing another metabolism called respiration. Nutrition, digestion and the respiration help us to yield the energy. So let's define nutrition. The process of obtaining nutrients in the form of food for the growth and development is called nutrition. I said nutrients. For our nutrients, nutrients are those chemicals, those biomolecules present in our food. Nutrients are of 5 different types. They are carbohydrate, lipid, proteins, vitamins and minerals. Among the 5, carbohydrate and lipid are the source of energy, while protein helps for the growth and development of your body. We have the vitamins and minerals. They does hundreds of jobs in your body, like fighting against the infection, wound healing and many more. Some organism has the ability to make their own food, whereas other organism, they cannot make their own food. They have to depend on some other organism for their food, for their energy need. Those organisms which can make their own food are called autotrophs. For example, plants and some bacteria. While some organisms, they cannot synthesize their food, they have to depend upon the plants for their energy need, and for the food supply, they are said to be the heterotrophs. So the nutrition can be classified as 2 modes of nutrition. First one is the autotrophic nutrition, while the other is the heterotrophic nutrition. Let's focus on the autotrophic nutrition first. So as the name indicates, autotrophic. Auto means self, trophic means nourishing. Autotrophic is self-nourishing. So those organisms who has the ability to make their own food are called autotrophs. And the mode of nutrition is autotrophic nutrition. They are also called as the producers. Nutrition in plants. Plants, the green plants have the ability to convert inorganic substances like the carbon dioxide and water to an organic substance called carbohydrate. They use carbon dioxide and the water to make their own food, and this process is being facilitated by the sunlight and the chlorophyll. The carbon dioxide is taken through the stomata. You know stomata? Stomata are the small minute pores present in the lower surface of the leaf. That's a stomata. The stomata or the opening is guarded by 2 guard cells. The guard cells are important for the opening and the closure of stomata. If more water fills into the guard cell will expand, they will swell. It will lead to the opening of the stomata. While when the water goes out from the guard cell will shrink, it leads to the closure of the stomata. So during daytime, stomata remains open, so the more the carbon dioxide will be fixed by our plant. Plants also need water for making their own food. The water are absorbed through the roots. Now we have the carbon dioxide and water. The carbon dioxide need to be converted to a carbohydrate. For that mechanism, the plant need a great deal of energy. How the plant gets energy? Yes, the answer is sunlight. Sunlight or the solar energy will be converted to chemical energy called ATP. For harnessing the sunlight, plants have a specialized organelle called chloroplast. Chloroplast contains a greenish pigment called chlorophyll. With that ATP, carbon dioxide and the water will be converting to a carbohydrate. That's a chemical equation for food synthesis. You could see that 6 moles of carbon dioxide and the 6 moles of water, they react in the presence of sunlight with the help of chlorophyll to produce 1 mole of carbohydrate, and oxygen also released. This whole step happens in the presence of sunlight. So the synthesis of food by the green plant in the presence of sunlight powered by chlorophylls are called the photosynthesis. As the name indicates, photo, light, synthesis means making. So in the presence of sunlight, plants make their own food. Here you could see an interesting factor that carbon dioxide is get reduced to form carbohydrate. What happens with the water? Water undergo a process called photolysis. That is, in the presence of sunlight, water splits into hydrogen and oxygen. And that the oxygen you can see on the RHS. Oxygens are released through stomata. While that hydrogen is instrumental in converting carbon dioxide to its reduced form called carbohydrate or the glucose. So we can say the whole steps involved in photosynthesis are absorption of sunlight by the chlorophyll, conversion of sunlight or the solar energy to chemical energy called the ATP, splitting of water to release hydrogen and the oxygen. Finally, the reduction or the conversion of carbon dioxide to glucose. The glucose can be readily used by the plant or it can be stored in the form of starch. Moving to heterotrophic nutrition. In this mode of nutrition, organisms, they cannot synthesize their own food. They have to depend directly or indirectly on the producers. As the name indicates, hetero means different, trophic means nourishing. So those organisms which depends upon other organisms for their nourishing are known as heterotrophs. Animals and fungus comes under this category. So depending upon the type and availability of food materials and how it is obtained, the mode of nutrition and the nutritive apparatus varies. Some organism, they releases enzymes and acid out to the body and the digestion occurs outside their body. This mode of nutrition is called saprophytic nutrition. Fungus comes under this category. They are also known as the decomposers. Whereas some organisms which derive the digested food materials from their host without harming them. This mode of nutrition are called parasites or parasitic nutrition. Examples are cuscuta, twigs, leeches and many more. On the other hand, some organisms, they take the whole food inside their body. Digestion and absorption occurs inside their body. Those mode of nutrition are called holozoic nutrition. Humans, amoeba comes under this category. So different organisms have different method of obtaining and digesting the food materials. But the basic steps of digestion and absorption remain same. They are ingestion, digestion, absorption, assimilation and the elimination or egestion. Ingestion is the process of intake of food. While digestion is much more complex, it is the process of breaking down the whole complex food molecule into simpler monomer form. Absorption is the process of intake of the digested food materials by the cell or the organism. Assimilation, it is the process of utilizing the digested food materials by the organism. Next is the egestion. Egestion is the process of removal of the undigested food materials from your body. Dear children, now let's learn about digestion in unicellular organism. Here is the amoeba. Amoeba, as you know, is having an amorphous shape. That means it does not have a definite shape. You also could see the extension, a finger-like extensions called pseudopodia. The pseudopodia has two main roles in amoeba. First one is to capture the food. The second being helps in locomotion. Once the amoeba finds its prey around it, it projects its pseudopodia. It will engulf the prey. Later, the pseudopodia fuse to form a vacuole. So inside the vacuole happens the digestion. The food will be getting digested inside the vacuole. The digested food materials are absorbed and utilized by the amoeba, whereas the waste substance are sent to the surface of the cell and later thrown out. Moving on to the nutrition in paramecium. Unlike amoeba, paramecium is having a definite shape of a slipper. You could see numerous fine hair-like structure around them. They are cilia. You also can see a groove, a pocket-like structure. That's the mouth of the paramecium. Unlike amoeba, paramecium is having a definite or a permanent mouth. So cilia will help to direct the food particle to the mouth, and the food particle is taken inside the paramecium and later happens a digestion. And the undigested food materials are later thrown out from the paramecium. Dear children, here comes the most awaited topic under nutrition. That is the nutrition in humans. Humans are omnivores. That means they can intake both the plant and the animal food as their food supply. Digestion in humans occurs inside the digestive system. Here is the digestive system of the humans. The digestive system comprises of two main components. They are the alimentary canal, also known as the gut, and the digestive glands. Together forms the digestive system. The digestive system in humans extends from the mouth and ends in anus. The whole system, the whole alimentary canal is of 9 meters long. Imagine it's the height of a 3-storied building. From the mouth to anus, you can see different organs of different sizes and different diameters. So like I told you, it starts with the mouth. Mouth is a small opening between your two lips. Mouth opens to a buccal cavity, also called as the oral cavity. Oral cavity leads to a tube-like structure called food pipe, also called as the esophagus. Esophagus connects to a J-shaped elastic muscular bag called stomach. Later, the stomach leads into highly convoluted, highly coiled, tangled structure called small intestine. Small intestine are 6 meters long. It's a height of a 2-storied building. Small intestine later connected to large intestine. The point to be noted that large intestine is just 1.5 meter long. So how come the small and the large intestine? Dear children, please note that the small and the large doesn't depend upon the length of the tube. It all depends upon the diameter of each tube. The diameter of the small intestine is just 1.5 inch, while the diameter of the large intestine is 3 inch. Both the intestine, small and large intestine, are lined internally by small finger-like projections called microvilli. Hope you know its function. Large intestine is connected to the rectum, where the undigested food materials are stored for a short period of time. Later, the waste material is expelled through a small opening called anus. So that's the way the food travels all the way from the mouth to the buccal cavity, esophagus, then comes the stomach, small intestine, large intestine, rectum, then anus. That's the waste being expelled from your body. So that's all about your alimentary canal. Moving to the gland, the digestive gland. We have almost 5 different kinds of digestive gland. The first one being the salivary gland, seen inside your buccal cavity. Salivary gland produces a secretion called saliva. It contains an enzyme called salivary amylase. The gastric gland are seen in the inner wall of your stomach. Gastric gland produces a secretion, a fluid called gastric juice. It contains an enzyme called pepsin. Next comes the largest organ, that's the liver. Liver produces a secretion called bile. Bile are stored in a small pocket called the gallbladder. The secretion from the liver is sent to the small intestine through a narrow duct, an opening called the bile duct. There are no enzymes present in the bile juice. The gland which comes after the liver is the pancreas. Pancreas can be seen on the back side of your stomach. It's a tongue-like structure. It produces 3 main enzymes, and it does the function of digestion of carbohydrate, lipids, and of course the protein. And finally, we have the gland seen in the inner wall of the intestine. The secretion from the intestinal glands are termed as the succus entericus. It also releases various enzymes. This enzyme function is the final digestion of the food particle. The function played by each enzyme will be discussed later in this video. So, moving on to the mechanism of digestion and absorption in humans. Like I told you before, there are 5 steps in digestion and absorption. They are ingestion, digestion, absorption, assimilation, and the egestion. So, by the process of ingestion, the food are intaken. The first step is so simple. The second step, digestion, is being complex. In the digestion, the food molecule, the complex food molecules has to be broken down into simpler molecules. So the polymer is to be converted to monomer. Then only our body can absorb it. Digestion occurs in the 3 places of your body. They are the buccal cavity, stomach, and the small intestine. So let's see what happens inside our mouth. Our mouth contains 3 main organs. They are the tongue, the teeth, and the salivary gland. Salivary gland produces a secretion called saliva. It contains a sticky fluid called mucus, an enzyme called salivary amylases. The whole portion of the food that you are intaken will be chewed into smaller pieces by our teeth. And the tongue does a major role in mixing the food with the saliva. So the tongue acts like a spoon. It mixes the food with the saliva. So food gets moistened with the help of saliva. And the mucus present in the saliva helps to glue the food materials together so as to form a bowl-like structure called bolus. In general, we take the food in the form of starch or glycogen. Starch or glycogen, being a polysaccharide, will be converted with the help of salivary amylases to a much more simpler sugar called maltose. Maltose is an example for a disaccharide. So once the food is chewed properly, the process of chewing called mastication. So once the food is getting masticated properly, the food will be sent to the esophagus with the help of the tongue. So tongue helps to swallow the food. So food is now in a partially digested form called bolus. The bolus now need to move through the esophagus. It is interesting to note that the movement of the food is not under the principle of gravitation. The food moves all because of the rhythmic contraction and relaxation of the wall of the esophagus. Wall of the esophagus contains muscles. These muscles will help in the motility of the food materials. So the rhythmic contraction and relaxation of the muscle wall of the esophagus helps in the motility of the food through the esophagus are termed as peristalsis or peristaltic movement. This peristaltic movement can be found in the entire length of your alimentary canal. So this enables the food to pass down from buccal cavity to the stomach. So guys, what happens during vomiting? During vomiting, the undigested food will be sent from the stomach to the buccal cavity. Just the opposite of peristalsis, we call it as anti-peristaltic movement. So the partially digested food called the bolus is now in a J-shaped muscular organ called stomach. Food stays here for a longer duration, for maximum 3 hours. So stomach is getting sufficient amount of time for the proper digestion of food. Please note that a nutrient called protein was first not digested in the buccal cavity. In the buccal cavity only happened the digestion of polysaccharide. In the stomach, we have a gastric gland. Gastric gland produces hydrochloric acid, an enzyme called pepsin, and mucus. The enzyme pepsin is a protein digesting enzyme. It will convert protein to a simpler form of protein called peptones. It is interesting to note that the hydrochloric acid, the dilute hydrochloric acid produced by the walls of the gastric gland will create an acidic medium. This acidic medium is important for the activation of the enzyme called pepsin. In fact, pepsin is produced in the form of pepsinogen, an inactive form. This inactive form has to be converted to an active form with the help of the acidic pH. As you all know, acid is corrosive. It can damage the inner lining of your stomach. So to prevent the corrosion by the HCl, mucus are produced. So mucus forms a lining inside your stomach, and the mucus will prevent corrosion by the HCl. So how beautiful is that, right? Pepsin is activated by the hydrochloric acid. To prevent the damage from the hydrochloric acid, mucus are being lined. So till now, a part of carbohydrate and a part of peptones is being digested. Now lipids need to be digested. So as the partially digested food passes from the stomach, it now enters to the small intestine. The partially digested food which exceeds the stomach are said to be the chyme. Chyme now enters to the final destination of digestion, that's our small intestine. Small intestine is the site of ultimate final digestion and absorption. Small intestine receives secretion from the liver, pancreas, and of course the succus entericus. Pancreatic juice contains 3 main enzymes, namely pancreatic amylases, trypsin, and lipases. Pancreatic amylase is involved in the digestion of carbohydrate. Trypsin is involved in the digestion of protein, whereas the lipases is involved in the digestion of lipid. And these enzymes produced by the pancreas could be activated only in an alkaline pH, in a basic pH. So this basic ambience is created by the secretion from the liver, that is the bile. So bile does the 2 main functions: to create an alkaline pH in the gut, in the cavity of the small intestine, and also emulsification of fat. Emulsification of fat means the breakdown of fat into simpler globular structure. Finally, the enzyme from the succus entericus does the complete and the final digestion of the food molecule, so that the carbohydrate that we have intaken in the form of glycogen or starch is broken down to glucose. Protein is broken down into amino acids, while the lipids are broken down into glycerols and fatty acids. So these digested particles are now ready for absorption. So you could see here the small intestine completes the final process of digestion. So the third process is absorption. The digested food particles like the glucose, amino acids, fatty acids and glycerol will be absorbed by small finger-like projections seen in the inner wall of the small intestine called microvilli. And microvilli is richly supplied with the blood vessels. So these nutrients will get diffused into the blood capillaries. The blood will be taking them into different parts of your body to different cells and tissues. Once the digested food materials or nutrients reaches your cell, then occurs the assimilation. Assimilation is the process of utilization of the digested food materials by the cell or by the body for their growth, development and energy requirements. Finally, the undigested food materials are thrown out from the body. For that, the undigested food materials are sent to the large intestine. In the large intestine, the waste gets much more concentrated. That is, the water present in the undigested food particles will be absorbed by the microvilli present in the large intestine, so that the waste becomes more and more concentrated and solid. The walls of the large intestine also releases mucus, so that the waste can easily pass through your large intestine without any friction. The waste will be stored in the rectum for a smaller duration, and once you have the urge of defecation, the anal sphincter muscle present in the anus will open and the waste will be defecated from your body, thereby completing the process of digestion. So the process of discharging the waste material, the undigested food particle from the living organism, is known as egestion.